and gentlemen, we're
It's
here.
time.
It's time to dive into the bag. Here we go. If you guys catch that reference before,
Yeah.
oh geez. Brad, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I was telling you before we started, I lost my phone in the practice field when I was throwing, so that was an interesting little development. But hey, just a normal day. It wasn't raining though, so something weird had to happen.
Yeah, you know, we can't just have nice things. We've got to make sure that it's some form of distraction, chaos. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm excited for today's discs. One of them, a disc that I'm pretty familiar with. I had sent to me in a larger package. I've played with a lot of players who have this in their bag. Specifically, and I don't know why this gets sorted in my head, but I know a lot of female golfers who use this specific one, and another disc that's brand new to the market. And yeah, I'm very excited for this. Now, I will tell you, I have had the opportunity to play with our guest before.
Okay.
So, a little familiar with, not necessarily, he feels like he has an ever-changing bag, but we definitely, I've seen him throw before, for sure.
Okay. Well, that always helps. I mean, I think it's one thing, our perception as a player, how we throw, unless you're really, really honest with yourself. And we get little fishing stories as disc golfers, right? Like, hey man, I throw like 450 feet every time. You probably did at some point, but maybe it's more closer to like 375 or something like that. So, and that's okay. That's part of the fun. It's part of the tall tales of disc golf. And it's nice when we get to play with our listeners, because we get a realistic dive. And also for you, Robbie, you can analyze form much better than anybody else. So you can, like how he throws, what his like misses, and what his angles look like. And that's like the formula for the best recommendation, really.
Yeah. I mean, it is like, I wouldn't consider us the disc doctors. That's a product in itself. But like, truly, if we're coming out here and we're trying to give recommendations, if I walk into the doctor's office and I'm like, hey, by the way, my toes hurt, I need you to fix my toes. And and the doctor's going to ask questions to try to diagnose, is it actually the toes, when it could actually, like, when it truly could be a ankle injury. So what we have to do, and half the reason that we have set the show up in the way that we do, is we have some information we try to gather before, but then the more honest you are with us guys, like, because we don't want to send you a disc that doesn't work, that isn't helpful, anything like that. So just very, very real. And plus, like when you say you throw X amount of distance on the internet and then you actually don't throw that, it's like the worst lie to ever believe, because all we have to do is just play with you, and we know.
Yeah. And also, I mean, I think the first step in getting better at anything, not even just disc golf, is being really honest with yourself and how you throw. I mean, I had to do that. I've had to do that multiple times throughout this run of this podcast. I mean, we're approaching episode 70 very rapidly, and there's like real deal honest times I've had to sit down and tell myself. I mean, like recently, I mean, I'm throwing more accurately, but I'm not throwing as far right now. And I've got to be very honest with myself, even playing rounds, like, hey, I know you think you have this huge arm and can reach it with a 7 speed. Maybe just like throw a mid-range out there in the fairway and just take a par like a gentleman.
Especially somewhere like Fallen Creek, where you're going, okay, there's a lot of birdies out here, but also I can get a stupid bogey really, really fast. So that's totally fair. Before we dive in and get to our guests, I feel like that was a little, just, a little heart-to-heart moment with our listeners. We like to have that. I had a heart-to-heart
because
moment.
We love you all, because we respect you. We want to just like preface this episode.
Yeah, I had a heart-to-heart moment with a listener yesterday on the course, who I met randomly, and they got a real raw Robbie C out there. They got to meet Robbie Crawford. We'll put it that way. Brad knows what that means.
I know Robbie Crawford.
So it was a time, but we want to thank the sponsor of today's video, Flippy Disc Golf. Thank you for Flippy and Aaron for being a supporter of the show for such a long time now. Flippy disc golf gear, some of the best gear in the game. Absolutely love it. And it has a multitude of products. They have a multitude of products available. You can go with performance wear if you're living in the swamp, aka the South that we live in, where there seems to be humidity everywhere you look. And then you also, if you want to have a nice cotton shirt or things like that to wear around the house, Brad rocking our in the bag polo or in the bag merch right now. We have t-shirts available. One of my favorite things about the in the bag shirt is that everyone's like, the logo just looks really cool. I love our logo. I think it's pretty sick. But then there's like this schematic that they did on the back that breaks down this bag. And it's always a fun surprise when people see the in the bag shirt and then you turn around and leave them with something great. So super great options.
Awesome.
Lots of creators out there. They've just launched new designs. I know Swanky has their designs. We have Robbie C designs. We have Foundation designs, in the bag designs. So all of your favorite things, you can support creators in a multitude of ways. You can support what we're doing here on the podcast, heading over to flippydiscgolf.com.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. Thanks, Flippy. And, speaking of Flippy, let's get into this week's episode and let our guest in.
Come on. Welcome to In the Bag, JMO, as I am known to call you. But John Michael, does that work?
Yeah, that's perfectly fine.
Perfect. I'm still just going to call you JMO.
Yeah.
But JMO, me, Brad, me, JMO.
I'll call you J Michael. I'll mix it up.
J Mike. Okay. I love it.
I've been called multiple different things.
Well, in the intro, we kind of teased that JMO, I've gotten to play with you before. So that lets people kind of know culturally, not culturally, geographically.
Yes.
Where you're located. Culturally, where you're located. Yeah, I don't think that works.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we want our players to get to know you, get to know your bag before we dive in. Even when Brad opened your bag, the initial comment was like, "Oh, this is a pretty well-rounded bag," and I was like a long-time listener of the show, had a lot of influence on this bag, so I think it's gonna be good. And then I also had a fun little game with Brad of like looking at the bag, saying, "How far do we think he throws?" So we have some adjustments we want to make on this, on like almost immediately to it, which are not exciting adjustments in terms of how do I want to describe this? Joy of discs. Is that fair, Brad?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think part of the pain of getting better is just narrowing some stuff down and consolidating, and it's never fun. No matter what stage of the game you're in, it's never fun.
But
so we will have some suggestions for that, but we're also going to suggest something to go in, so it'll be hopefully less painful at that.
Yeah, and the thing we're suggesting to go in, I think legitimately could be like huge distance for you.
Yeah, for sure.
So
I would agree with that.
But before we do that, we want to get to know you as a player. So JMO, how long have you been playing?
I've been playing for about 3 years. I started in like the 2019, like late 2019 into 2020, but periodically. But 2021 is really when I started to dedicate myself to being a disc golfer.
Okay, awesome.
So roughly about 3.5.
Okay.
Awesome.
Love it. Love to hear it. And so you always, you got those people that were a little bit pre-COVID, but were like they discovered it pre-COVID, but COVID's where the free time really took you into it.
Yeah.
So totally get that. If we were to set a basket out in a field and say, all right, JMO, you got to throw, try to hit it consistently. How far out do you think you could reach it consistently on both a backhand and a forehand?
I would say probably backhand, probably consistently, maybe 260, 275, maybe 300 if I get a good rip off of it. And then forehand's probably about 275, maybe 300.
Okay.
Are you which do you primarily throw, or is it really a 50-50 mix for you?
When I first started, it was primarily forehand because that's where I got most of my power, kind of from like the ultimate Frisbee type thing. And then basically when I played with you, Robbie, that's kind of when I started to really get my backhand kind of going. So it's started to really kind of be more 50-50 now.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good to know.
So we line you up on the putting green, JMO, and we said, all right, we got to make 10 putts from 15 feet, 10 putts from 20 feet, 10 putts from 15, 10 from 25, 10 from 40. How many are you making at each station?
I would say 15, probably probably 8, 9 out of 10. Just kind of because I don't feel confident 10 out of 10, but I feel confident in at least 9 out of 10. 25, probably, I'd probably say 6 out of 10, maybe 7. Just kind of depending on the weather, I guess, because sometimes the weather is not good for disc golfers. And then 40 feet, probably maybe 3 out of 10, because I haven't really practiced too much at 40 feet.
Okay. Hi. I love it. And I love the confidence of, the confidence and the realness of it. So our last question in terms of them getting to know you as a golfer, JMO, is what would you say is the biggest strength of your game right now?
The biggest strength is probably my upshots, because I could be, and I don't know what it is, but it's like throwing a zone or a polecat has really been perfect for me doing upshots. And so ever since I got those discs, being in a terrible spot, I can throw it and then be perfectly fine. So I think that's probably the biggest strength in my game.
Awesome. And I would like to go ahead and point out everyone who's going to already in the comments be like, well, this man throws a polecat. So obviously that's why Robbie has influence on him. But he also throws a zone. So obviously I'm not doing complete influence here. So, and before we really dive in, I think that it's kind of a unique story that you've told me before, kind of like how you got into disc golf. And I think it'd be a cool moment for listeners to be able to connect with this, because I think you have more of an appreciation of foundation than a lot of people. So would you mind sharing that? Is that okay?
Yeah, I don't mind at all. So basically in 2019, probably about September, my mom passed away. And I'm not going to go in detail about any of more of that, but it's just, she passed away and I was in a bad mental state pretty much. So I was like, I need something to get me out of the house. I had a good family and I'm thank God every day for the family that I have, but I needed something to get me out of the house where I experienced most of the stuff. So I was watching Brody from about probably when he was still in college. And then when he turned into disc golf, I was like, let me discover that. And so basically from then on, I bought I think it was the dynamic disc starter set, whichever, it was on Amazon, so I don't remember which one it was. But and then after a while, I was kind of thinking about quitting, and then I discovered you, Robbie, and so you were kind of one of the bigger parts of reason why I stayed in it. So it's like I always say, Brody got me into it, Robbie kept me into it, and that's kind of just one of those things. And then playing rounds with you, and you really kind of showing me how to do it, and then watching your videos and countless times on how to throw forehands and backhands and all that kind of stuff really helped me and got me out of that bad mental state that I was in for probably a good few months. So,
well, it is an honor to be part of your story, man.
That's awesome. Sorry about your loss, but glad that's what disc golf's about to me. That's why I love disc golf. Why I still love disc golf is like, you never know. And I think, a humbling moment for Robbie and I is always hearing stories like yours. I mean, we've heard multiple, and it's just like, hey, I got and throw discs in a field. That's exciting, right? But it does have an effect, and if nothing else, it lets you feel like you're part of something, and like I feel like I'm part of something. Robbie feels like he's part of something like a little bit bigger than us, and it's just really cool. Sorry to get a little sappy there, but I appreciate I appreciate that, dude. So we're glad you're here. Glad it's come full circle for you, and glad that you're still hanging around. We're glad to have you a part of the group, if you will.
Absolutely.
The crew.
And another shout out to Foundation, of course. They were another Hunter and Trevor kind of doing stuff like that, how they were doing tutorials, kind of like with you, Robbie, kind of doing those backhand tutorials and stuff like that. And then shout out for 100K, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's definitely, it's awesome. We're very proud of that. Again, humbling. It's humbling to get to this point because, Robbie, you said this on your live. Sorry to go on this tangent, all in the bag listeners. We'll get to the discs. All right.
Yeah.
It's just one of those
you gotta
moments.
know the person throwing the bag before you can get in the bag.
Right.
True.
Maybe that's a new segment we have to do at the beginning. But anyway, when Robbie said this, Robbie, you equated, there are very few stadiums that can fit all the people that have subscribed to my channel.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about how many people, like 100,000 people. That's a lot of people. And not only, there's enough people that cared enough about what we do to say, I want to see what you're doing all the time. You know, that's crazy. I haven't, it's not really sunk in for me yet. Again, I'm only a very small part of that 100K journey, right? I think the guys were maybe at like 75K or so, maybe more when I joined a year or so ago. But we appreciate people like you, Jay Money, Jay Michael, Mike John, whatever I want to feel like calling you. But it's because of people like you that we get to do what we do, and we just greatly appreciate you. So thank you. You know, sappy moment ended. Let's go destroy his bag, Robbie.
Here we go.
Get wrecked.
So we're going to
just to
start
break you down.
Exactly. We're going to start with the putters and work our way up to fairway drivers. So
get rid of all of them. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah. I mean, we've got thoughts on the distance drivers for sure, but once again,
I can probably imagine
we can build into that. If you're a longtime listener, people know what's coming when it comes to our suggestions, based even on the distances and things like that. The only thing that you know what, we'll just go ahead. How about we talk distance drivers real fast, and then we'll come back around to putters.
That seems like a good idea.
So, how many of these, JMO, like the PD? So you've got the PD, a Wraith, a Machete, and 2 destroyers in the bag. So you got 5 distance drivers that are 10 speed or faster. How many of them are any of them lighter weight?
I believe the Machete is, but I'm sorry, not the Machete, but the PD. And then I've got the Robbie Wraith, so I think that's probably about 170, 172.
Okay.
Yeah, 172 is what the Wraith is. So,
yeah.
Okay.
But all the others are max weight.
Yeah. So looking at that, especially even if I would say if you were coming into this and you were like, I throw 250, 275 on a backhand, but I throw 325, 350 on a forehand, something like that. I think that the conversation looks a little differently in terms of, have these in the bag, these not. But in my mind, if you're throwing that distance, the destroyers and the Wraith probably all fly, I'm guessing, somewhat similar in terms of they're gonna just fight out.
Yeah, because I've got a Ricky destroyer that I primarily throw on forehand because it's just to get that little straight pushing one and then kind of fade out at the end like how it's meant to do. And then I've got a Calvin, and then I've got your Wraith. So I'm been going back and forth. So I'm probably going to go the Wraith route instead of the destroyer. But I've been kind of just having both in the bag just in case type situations.
Yeah, and that makes total sense. I think that I think the Wraith could push most of that out. I think the PD and the Machete, probably extreme beef coming out of those two.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely the Machete. The PD, I kind of do more for if I'm wanting to hang something out very wide and then have it come crashing in. And the Machete is I had it in the bag just for, I'm a Brody fan, but I'm probably going to take it out just for my mind's sake.
Yeah. Here's the danger, I think, with your bag. And it's very well, like on paper, it's very, very well thought out. I think someone I think I could hand this bag to Trevor or Hunter or Robbie, and they could pretty much tear up any course that they needed to with it. So I think the theory behind your bag is excellent. I think it's very, very good. But I think the danger, and I'm speaking to you, but I'm also speaking to myself, and because I've literally just done this. When you're okay, well, theoretically I have all these spots covered, right? For my distance driver category. I have everything I need to do. I get this course confusion. That's trademark. No, I'll do the Trevor. That's trademark. Course confusion where the Machete, the PD, and maybe destroyer that's very overstable for you. It makes you think more about your disc selection than throwing the shot and what the shot needs to be. So for me, I have a PD in my bag, but I only have it for, hey, it's really windy and I've got to get left. And that's really the only distance driver I really have that, number one, is that speed and also that stability in my bag now, because I'm I know that I need that shot, so I'm grabbing that disc, not the other way around. I'm going to grab this disc to get that shot. Does that make sense, Robbie? Am I like off base there?
No, I completely agree. You are so focused on, and it's even the disc selection and the replication of,
yeah.
oh yeah, like how Brody's going to use a machete. A great reference. So Brody, when I went up with Brody to Music City, Brody didn't even have like a machete in his bag when we first started attacking that course because it's so overstable even for him. So he ended up going and grabbing a machete because we were having a hard time hitting the 2 island holes. And he was like, oh, I have a disc for this. Let me go get it. Kind of a deal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Brody, who's throwing 400-foot forehands.
Right. And I think that, you know, and here's like where I kind of broke off because, again, I was a Brody fan before Foundation. I was a Foundation fan before working here. I was a Robbie and Jesse Trash Panda fan before working here. So like you want to support those people. You can still buy their discs and collect them. You can still be a Brody fan and like, hey, I'm going to buy a machete and try it out, and I'll keep it in the arsenal so that maybe one day I'll find a use for it or something like that, or just, hey, I'm a fan, I like that, I'm going to keep it over here. But I think really for you, what does the Wraith do for you specifically?
It normally goes, I guess it kind of just pushes straight on that backhand and then fades out like how I want it to, basically. So it's kind of like the Destroyer and the Wraith do the same thing for me.
Now here's the other, and sorry to jump maybe ahead, but I think we're kind of grouping all drivers together, Robbie. But like your Wraith and your T-Bird, what's the difference for you for both of those discs?
Well, the T-Bird is more, I'm kind of doing like those shorter holes, but I need just the one to kind of throw out wide and then have it come crashing in. It's kind of what I normally use that one for. So just shorter holes, and then 300 and longer probably would throw the Wraith if I need that one for that shot.
Okay. So I guess if we talk straight distance, your T-Bird and your Wraith, can you throw one farther than the other noticeably? Or are they really going about the same? It's just the flight that is different.
I would say they're probably about the same. It's just the flight's a little bit different.
Okay. That's good to know. And then that's where I'm, you know, again, being real with myself here, which is kind of the theme of the episode, is I'm throwing my 7 and 8 speeds just as far, if not farther, than my 10 speed. So that's why I've really taken all of them out other than the PD, because I want it for the beef only. And I know that I can't throw that disc as far as intended. So it's going to be extra beefy the way that I like it, you know? So that's why only reason I keep that. But, you know, these even 9 speeds, I've like kind of capped myself, other than the Vulture that I throw regularly, that's the only thing above a 9 speed I even allow myself to throw on the course. Because I think what you're seeing is the same thing I'm seeing. That 7 speed is not really going any farther than that Wraith. Now you're saying a different shot type, that's fine. Yeah. So maybe, you know, what about the Guadalupe or really is it an Opto River that you have? Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the Opto River fly like compared to your Wraith?
Well, I normally use that one for like wind type shots, but the river is going just dead straight for me, honestly, and kind of just one of those shots.
Okay. So is there any overlap? I'm trying to find the overlap. There seems like an overlap between like your Wraith and then maybe like Guadalupe T-Bird area.
I would guess it's the Saint Pro or the Undertaker, probably even the Undertaker being the most like, I'm sure, in terms of like straight push and then it's just going to finish.
Yeah, because I know the Saint Pro, I primarily throw it on forehand, to kind of just get that straight pushing shot and then have it just slightly fade out for me. And the Undertaker is primarily just straight for me every time I throw it on that forehand.
Okay. And I'm going to make a bold statement, Robbie.
Please
just so we can walk down through this bag a little bit more. I would say, just for your sake of working on your form, gradually increasing your distance, making your shot selection a little bit better, for like right now, I would just say 10 speed and above, take out of your bag, put on your shelf, and don't go above that for right now. Would you agree,
Okay.
Robbie, or is that like a very like an extreme idea?
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, it's when we say take 5 discs out of your bag or take like a whole field out of your bag. There's no way of saying it's not an extreme idea, but just because it's extreme doesn't mean it's incorrect either.
Yeah, and I think again, this is not anything I haven't done myself, and it's hard because I liked the discs that I was taking out, but it was just being honest with myself that they were not any different than anything else I was throwing that was slower speed, and then I can start paying attention to like, okay, well, this mockingbird is in this plastic and I can try it in this plastic, and like, how do those fly differently? So you can start experimenting with that sort of thing. But and I always found myself trying to crank so hard on those faster discs, just subconsciously. I'm like, I've got to throw this so much harder. My accuracy went to like 10% and I just wasn't getting any more distance. And I was like, what is the point of me trying to do this? So that's my rant for the day.
Yeah. And we've talked about before, like there's a use for distance drivers, even if you don't have the distance, like that can exist. But if you're getting that shot out of fairway drivers already, then is the distance driver as needed? And once again, to all the fans of anyone who has a disc to their name, I get it. I have no less than 10 Calvin Destroyers sitting downstairs that are just looking at me every day that I get home from field work, or I get down with like, okay, doing some shadow swings, working in the garage, whatever it is, like working on my form. I have them sitting there so that when I go downstairs and I look, I see it and I'm like, I'm coming for you, baby. I'm coming. But they're still sitting over there. The only one that's in my bag is purely there for utility. And I'm just barely ever throwing it. So, once again, the big challenge I would give JMO is if you took all of them out, the real test is, do you get to a hole? Like you're going to come to holes where you're like, I normally throw the Wraith here. I normally throw the machete. I normally throw whatever this may be. But when you throw something else, did you miss the distance driver? That's the real like question mark thing to look at.
Yeah. And yeah, just to kind of come off of that point too, Robbie, if you go out and you're like, man, I'm really missing the Wraith right now, it's okay to have the Wraith. Like, but maybe like the stuff around the Wraith doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Maybe the other disc you have in like that fairway speed cover, or maybe make you even a little more accurate and cover those shots. Yeah. So, and then I would just say swap it out for something that's similar that maybe you're not throwing and you wish you had the Wraith instead of, your Undertaker or whatever it might be.
Yeah. So we kind of dove into the left half of the fairway drivers. I'm going to save the right half of the fairway drivers because like the understable from Guadalupe over, because I'm very curious how that's going to fit in before we dive into the disc suggestion. So I want to dive in and I want to hear your thoughts on, you've got 5 putters in the bag. We're going to call the zone as our bridge, but 5 putters in the bag. You've got a P2, a polecat, an inner core, a sensei, and a proxy. So walk us through, what do those 5 do for you?
Well, the proxy is, I just lost one that Adam from Galactus gave me this past Sunday. And it was primarily like I would throw it on a forehand or a backhand. It would go right and then come back, like how an understable putter should be. So it's kind of my understable throwing putter. Then I've got the inner core for my straight, I just nothing but like not going to turn or anything, just straight kind of throwing style. And the sensei is kind of straight, but still kind of overstable enough to where I can just get that shot. And then the polecat and the zone are kind of more upshot based, to where the polecat's going to be more backhand upshots, and then the zone is going to be primarily forehand upshots. And then I just recently switched over to the P2 because I was putting with KC Pro AVRs. And then I was like, I like the feel of the P2 Flex 1 a little bit better, and it flies a little bit the same, but it's just that feel for it when you're putting. So that's kind of why I like the P2 just a little bit better.
Awesome. So we have I think your balance of the putters is really well done. Nothing. If there was overlap, I would say it would be between the proxy and the inner core, but that is if your inner core, if you've had it for a little while, it's going to be beat in to have a different flight, especially than an Eclipse proxy. So no qualms there. I'm going to be very excited as I get up to Virginia next week, because now I believe that I know I have a Dune, Brad has a Dune, Hunter has a Dune. I don't know if Trevor's rocking a Dune, but we all have, like, multiple of us have Dunes in our bag, and I'm just going to be curious how they've already shifted in flights from use.
Yeah, because I know I have one too, but I'm getting it dyed by Adam. I'm getting a little old school Alabama logo put on it.
I love it. We're all tied to that. So let's talk about mids then. You have the Zone as the approach disc. Zone really is an overstable option as well. Your reactor is an Eclipse plastic, and then a Hex and Fission, and then the Lobster. So talk to me about what the reactor, the Hex, and the Lobster do.
Well, the reactor is it's still got that slight overstability to it. So it's kind of just straight, but still kind of overstable. So it's like if I would do a really overstable, I'd go to the Zone. But just if I want that just still overstable, but still pushing straight, it would be the reactor. Then I have the Fission Hex for just dead straight. Like if I guess like a wood shot or something like that, just dead straight would be the Fission Hex. And then the Lobster, actually, and I saw your video you posted on Instagram about the warehouse guys do this so you don't have to. I saw it, and I saw the flight of it, and I was like, I want to try that. And I don't have the foundation one, sadly, but I do have one of the ones that they came out with. And every time I've thrown it, it's basically going slightly right, like how I would want it, and then come out as well. And then I've got the Dune for maybe take out the Hex, because it's still kind of straight, but I haven't really thrown it enough to really say that yet.
Our mid-range lineup's very similar. Like I have Uplink, then Lobster, then I have the Dune.
Canwall's down.
Canwall fell. I have the Lobster, the Dune, and then I do still have a Hex, and then I go to a Nebula, and then Bobcat. So that's like my full mid-range lineup. And I'm really finding that, and I just tried this out. I played Independence with Jason the other day, and there is a different like shot shaping and different type of shot I'm pulling out of the Dune versus the Hex for. So I don't know if you'll have an overlap. I feel like they both fit in my bag. Maybe they won't for you, but I definitely think there's like there's some beauty in the Hex being like really like shapeable. And then like the Dune, I know I can, if I need to get distance, if I need a lot of straight distance. So I'm not afraid to lean into the Dune. And like, that's what I'm choosing that shot for. The Hex, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to do more shaping with that one.
Yeah.
And at the 250, 275 mark for a backhand, I think that, and maybe Brad can elaborate on this if I don't cover it all, but like, when you're looking at it initially at 250, 275, you're probably throwing a lot of fairway drivers, a lot of distance drivers, because there's a lot of holes that you're reaching and saying, like, I have to throw my max distance shot because that's what's needed to get me to this hole. Like, unless you're playing pitch and putt courses, you're very rarely coming across moments where you're like, oh, I get to throw a putter on this hole. Like, and I can reach it comfortably. But I'd be still willing to bet that even your mid ranges are probably going 225, 250. And so looking at the bag, let's say that you were just like, you know what, I'm listening to those crazy guys on the internet and I'm going to pull out all the distance drivers, including the race. So I got 5 disc on right there. You still in the top side of your bag for fairway drivers have 9 fairway drivers in there. So there's 9 there. 4 in the mids, and then 5. So you're at 9 and 9. So you'd have 18 discs with half of them being 7 speeds or faster. So I think that adding the Dune, adding some mid-range shots, people don't have the mids in because you feel like you're not leaning on them enough, but also because there's not enough options. Like they almost get like slotted into this is the only shot I use the Lobster for. This is the only shot I use the Hex for. This is the only shot I use the Dune for. But if you had more of them, I think you would end up leaning on them more, almost in the same way that I'm sure you do with your fairways of the Guadalupe. And this will kind of be our transition, unless either of you like want to expand on that idea. But the Guadalupe and the river, are they pretty similar in how they fly for you?
Just about. It's like I primarily use the river for like those wind type shots to kind of get that little bit of extra glide to it. And then the Guadalupe is more, it's kind of just dead out there, no wind, and I just need a straight shot. It's kind of primarily what I use that for.
Mm-hmm.
And there's that subtle difference between the two that in theory, you probably could throw the Guadalupe in the wind, or you could throw the river without the wind and it would be okay. But you have the room in your bag and you know the difference between those two. So I'm not saying that either is inherent, like either route is bad. I like both routes. But if we were like going pure minimalization and whatnot, you could do that. Whereas I bet that you're going to end up, like Brad said, with your hex and your dune on, because the dune has so much glide.
Yeah, it's
crazy.
real. It's the real deal.
It's really good.
So yeah, so like you may end up there, like the hex just goes so far. That's what blows my. Every time I try to get away from the hex, I'm like, it's just free distance. I don't know that I want to do that. But then I've started discovering like, yeah, that dune. Oh my gosh, like it pushed my origins out so fast because the origin's a fantastic disc, but the dune just gets me an extra 25, 40 feet because glide alone.
Yeah. No, and I think what you said is really important. I just want to kind of echo it, Robbie, that, and this was for me, I was the guy that had one mid-range at one point, right? But as I like started seeing the difference in, I feel like mid-ranges, I really can throw well enough, like at a level in an appropriate distance that I can see the minute differences between discs and why those are important. Whereas the faster speed I go, the least amount of difference I see between my disc selection, between like, one stability rating, one fade rating, one turn rating. I can see that in the mid ranges. So I tend to have more of them in my bag right now. And I'm picking out like drivers and stuff to get rid of to make sure I have space for those like wider discs. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I wanted to just emphasize that point.
Okay. So JMO, our last grouping then is talk to me about the Mockingbird, the Jade, the Diamond, and the Virus.
And the Virus and the Mockingbird are somewhat similar. It's just I like one for like the Mockingbird is kind of just it still goes right and then comes back, and same thing with the Virus, but I like the Virus more for longer distances, and then the Mockingbird for maybe shorter distances. Maybe if I'm on a long hole, maybe a little upshot type throw. And then the Jade, I've kind of started to throw pretty straight into the wind, and kind of like the way that one flies for me. But and then the Diamond. Also, it goes. It's really flippy, so it kind of goes. If I needed to go right on a backhand because I don't trust the forehand route, then I would primarily do that for that one.
Okay. Awesome. So what we're going to talk about could be targeting that exact piece if you're seeing what I'm seeing, Brad.
Yep.
I think my question mark would be, you've heard me talk about it in a video before, but I would have a battle between the Jade and the Mockingbird and the Virus and kind of play all three on like a 9-hole round. And you can even do like 2 bouts of it, or 3 renditions of it. Do the Jade versus the Mockingbird versus the Virus, and the Jade versus the Virus, and then see which one like consistently wins, and then put your winners against each other, kind of a deal, just to see. Because if they're all 3 doing similar things, I would bet once again, if the Mockingbird fits, you probably could get more distance out of it, more comfortable distance out of it if you had to, but maybe you're not pushing it because you can just step up to the Virus.
Yeah, and the Jade has slowly started to be a little flippy for me anyway, so I'm considering taking that out of the bag anyway, but it's still kind of just in there for right now, pretty much.
Awesome. Well, we have a suggestion on this side of the bag, and I think it's going to be a solid fit.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Brad, what did you try today?
All right. I tried the brand new F9 from Prodigy, and then I also tried the Vortex from DGA.
Come on. The Vortex, for those of you who are looking for decoded messages, is the one in the intro that I was talking about. And part of my thought on why I think females primarily throw it is maybe because it's like Katrina's got her name all over it. But I don't know why, because it's good for everyone. I love that disc. I think it's so good. Hand feel. How they feeling?
Okay. I'm liking both of them. It's very weird. The F9, it does not, it's an 8-speed. It doesn't feel like one to me. The Vortex rim is a 7-speed, but it feels wider than the F9. It's really strange. They both feel good in the hand. I mean, this is Prodigy's new plastic that they're having manufactured elsewhere. So it feels really good. I don't have any flashing issues, which is my only issue with Prodigy most of the time. And then the Vortex is in the like their PL plastic, I believe is what this is called. Yeah. And it feels like ESP, very smooth, very familiar to me for obvious reasons. But I don't have a hand feel problem with either of them. I think if I had to give one the winner, it'd probably be the Vortex for hand feel.
Yeah. Totally fair. The Vortex, what's so beautiful to me about that is that, it does feel so fairway, because it is a fairway driver, but it just feels like such a comfortable fairway. As someone who loves his 7 speeds, it feels like home.
Yep, exactly.
So you took him out to a field, obviously threw him as hard as you could at all times, because that's the key to super flippy stuff. What were initial reactions to their flights?
Okay. Initial reaction, and I'll caveat it first by saying this, like I'm having some like arm issues. We all know that. And I have some on top of that now. So I really was throwing these at like maybe 50% power if I really was trying. And I was like, I'm not going to get these to flip like they're supposed to. So the first one, I just did a step and just threw it. And both of these flipped over. The F9 is maybe the flippiest disc I've ever thrown in my life. It is so flippy. Like even just like one step and pull through it. I went from a Hyzer, it flipped up. I thought it was going to roll. It didn't roll. It like caught itself and flattened out at the end, but it just flipped up, turned, and like almost burnt, but landed at the end. The Vortex was still flippy, like even at that speed, just a step and pull through. But I will say it did like a Hyzer flip up and like a gentle glide to the right, which was really nice. So like that flight was great. I did throw them on full power, like at the end after I got things kind of warmed up a little bit. And if you want a pretty like roller friendly, beginner friendly roller disc, then F9's got you covered.
Okay. What, in terms of with the F9 being so flippy, did you find there was like shapeable? Did you try any of the like high ante lines, things like that? How like shot options did the disc provide?
I would say the Vortex probably gave me some more options, just based. Okay. It had like some very usable understability. I would say the F9 definitely has its purpose, but I did find myself like if you gave it any reason to go right, it's going right hard. You know, even like a Sky nose up Annie, it's still going right. You know what I mean? Whereas the Vortex, I could give it that line. It was more that smooth glide to the right. And I didn't feel like it was going to, if I missed the angle a little bit, I didn't feel like it was going to like just burn over. F9 was real touchy as far as like the angle I gave it. I did try them both on forehand too, and I did stand still forehands. And the Vortex I have a Hyzer release for my forehand. The Vortex would flip up and ride left. Again, the F9 was just a little touchy. And it was like, I threw one and it actually a forehand rollered on me. It flipped up and then turned over and rolled. So I don't know. I just for the Vortex surprised me, to be honest with you. I think the Vortex has like a weird like underlying like wrap for some reason that it's just like, oh, it's ultra flippy. You can't throw it. You want a roller, just throw that disc. And for me, and again, now I'm not going out there blasting it at like 100% power. I'm sure that's what will happen if you do that. But like I was able to have some like smooth, like just single step like shots. I just did a standstill forehand. And I'm just trying to think about like on the course, what are those good for? I even did like a nose up kind of like almost flat forehand that kind of flipped up and like stalled out and just kind of sat down. So that's kind of an interesting shot. I don't know what the application to that is, but
Yeah.
I could do that.
So something we talk about a lot on the show is the okay, you have your nebula. And then when you go a step down from your nebula, you have an envy sitting in that slot. And when you go a step up from the nebula, you have your grackle sitting in that spot. Like finding a shot shape that you like and then adding all of the different angles to it.
Yeah.
So knowing that we really love that ramp existing, I was so curious in this slot. You have the uplink. Would you consider this slot, especially the Katrina Allen Vortex? There we go. I wanted to go Rift. Wrong disc. Would you consider that the fairway uplink?
Yes, 100%. And that is exactly what I was thinking when I was throwing it. Was like, hey, and personally, I've been looking for a disc like that because even the Jackalope is not like that. The Jackalope is not the uplink of my fairways. So the Jackalope is kind of more like the lobster of my fairways, which I like. Kind of makes sense. So yeah, this is like I might actually bag a Vortex after this again, just for that. It did have more than just one shot. There are shapes I can throw with this. There are different shots that I can say, hey, I need this shape. I'm going to grab this disc now. So I'm a big fan. The F9, I think, is just a version of that for maybe someone with a slower arm, or maybe they have like some different utility needs for that. But the Vortex, I think, is a better all-around disc for this slot.
Yeah. So it sounds like Vortex is a winner for heading to JMO?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Vortex is heading to you.
All right.
Come on. Well, JMO, how's that sound? Have you thrown a lot of DGA?
I tried the sail, but that's probably about it. But I never really liked the sail. It was way too flippy for me, honestly. And that's probably about it.
I think here's
honestly.
the misconception. And I think this is the misconception I had, to be fair. I felt like, oh, the Vortex is just a sail. Like that is like this subconscious thing that I had for some reason. But I bag a sail. It's not a sail.
Yeah. And as someone who has thrown, so when DGA sent me a box they sent me like basically their whole lineup in a box. And they sent me 2 Vortexes because my boy Tyler hooked me up. He sent me one Vortex that was max weight and one Vortex that was in the 150 class. And I think when the Vortex came out, I could be completely off base here. Comments correct me. But the Vortex, I think when they released it, they only released it in 150 class.
I feel like that's right. I feel like the original one was. And yeah, just to know, this one's 173, 174. And I picked that for that reason.
Yeah. So the lightweight ones, I'm sure, were, and as I've thrown one, insanely flippy. So I'm wondering if that's, like you said, Brad, like the marketing got hit for those early of everyone's throwing the lightweight ones, and they were like, it's a sale.
Yeah.
So awesome. Well, JMO, would you be willing to try out the sale and come on in a future episode and let us know how it flies for you?
Yeah, I definitely would.
Awesome, man. Well, we appreciate it. We'll get this sent out to you, and we'll talk to you soon.
All righty. Thank y'all.
Well, here we are. Guys, we try to keep it real with you as much as we can. We're hoping that if you're listening to this, that means it worked, I guess, is the best way to put it.
We'll spare you the details, but it was, and hey, J Money, it's not your fault, man. It's just how the interwebs and the cloud works. So yeah, if you're hearing this, it worked. We made it through. It took some substantial effort, but we made it through. And shout out to Psy Guy. It's going to be him to make it happen.
Yeah. So we appreciate it as always. And I'm telling you, the Vortex, sneaky good. And especially because the funny part is, like, from the suggestion train, is that we knew we were going to land on the F9. So we just had to find something to compare it to.
Yeah.
And the Vortex was, I'm pretty confident I gave you 4 options, and the Vortex was dead last on the suggestion options.
It was. And I was like, I've been wanting to throw it, to be honest with you. So it was just kind of a easy. I fully suspected the F9 to win, to be honest.
Yeah.
because it feels really great. It's that new plastic. It feels great. It's kind of hype. They just released it, and I was like, oh, that's an easy win for the F9. But we'll throw the Vortex because I want to throw it.
Yeah.
And who knew?
The best part about getting out and trying discs, guys, is you're going to find some incredible ones that shock you. And one of the best ways to find them is over at foundationdiscs.com. What's new in the warehouse, Brad?
All right. So this week was more of like a slow week, but we had a bunch of like random trilogy release, which I think I say every week. But two cool, like, well, maybe three cool. Maybe it's all cool. But Gold Orbit Diamond, Gold Orbit Sapphire. I know we talked about both those in this episode, but they look so good. I mean, I'm like, man, do I need to put the diamond back in my bag? Yeah. Just because it looks so good. Then we have, let me see if I can get all of these descriptive, I guess they're adjectives. I believe it is Lucid, Orbit X, Raptor Eye, Slammer, Sake Bomb Slammer. I don't know. It's some version of all that. It's,
okay. They're slammers. Yeah. We know that. They're Sake Bomb Slammers. We know that.
They're Raptor Eye. They're premium plastic.
Okay. Yeah. I think you got it right.
They're Orbit. So, you know, they feel great. If you're a Slammer person, make sure you check those out. I think they feel great. We did put some more DGA up. We have a few. We're trying to carry a little bit more of them. I think DGA gets overlooked a lot, and there's like some really solid molds. Like like the Sail, the Vortex, the Quake. There's a lot of really good molds there. Hypercane. So some of those went up this week as well. All of our Horizon Cloudbreakers sold out the day of. So unfortunately, those are not there. We're anticipating maybe some MVP before the weekend. We'll see if that comes in. If not, it'll be up here next week when Robbie's here. Just check out our recently restocked. We've been putting up a bunch of different molds that are maybe like, hey, these aren't like a new release, a new drop, but we're just like trying to fill our shelves with all the needs for everybody. And like, everyone likes different discs. So we're trying to cover all of our bases with all that. And again, all of the Discraft restock. We have pretty much almost every Discraft mold you could ever want and about any plastic that they have available. So make sure you check that out. And the biggest thing is subscription boxes. We've opened up a bunch more of those. So if you haven't heard about it, we have a monthly subscription box now. It's a 3-disc box, comes with 3 premium discs and then a swag item guaranteed every month. Huge value for what you're paying for it. And you never know what you're going to get in the box. It's a theme. There's going to be a card in the box every month telling you why we picked the box, what's the theory behind the discs that are in it. We've done everything from, manufacturer only boxes to like, again, themes, or we did a custom run of Halo Thunderbirds or Firebirds because we did a all bird box. Like that was a fun box. We did it. So jerky was a swag item more than 1 month. I mean, we've had all kinds of stuff in there. So if you haven't checked it out, make sure you do it. And hey, leave it in the comments. If you heard about it on In the Bag, leave it in the comments. Say, hey, Robbie and Brad said I need to subscribe to this box, so I did. And we'll make sure we take care of you. Thank you so much for everyone that supports us through foundationdiscs.com. And it was alluded to earlier in the episode that we hit 100K over here at Foundation on our main YouTube channel, and we're just very grateful for all of our fans and customers and everybody that made that possible. I'm a very small part of this big journey that's been going on, but I know I'm personally humbled and grateful, so thank you all. And it's because of listeners like you that not only consume the main YouTube channel content, but the podcast content, and even Robbie's content, and everybody that's out there supporting and just listening. That's all that needs to happen for this podcast, and we're just very grateful for all of you. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. We truly could not do any of this without you, and it makes it worth it every week coming in and sitting down and making it happen. So you're going to get out there, you're going to find a disc, you're going to be like, wow, this Lucid giant. I mean, we thought that, Ledgestone was making up titles. I feel like Ledgestone and Dynamic Discs or Trilogy in general are just looking at each other like, all right, who's going to hold the Guinness World Record for longest plastic combination name in the bag? But you're going to find one and you're going to be like, wow, this is exactly what I've needed. It's amazing. What do you do when it's good?
You keep in the bag. We will see you all next week.